Welcome back, everyone. Today's video is tech options and tips on how to deal with the current meta game. So the OP09 meta, you'll be seeing mostly these leaders, and especially in a larger scale tournament. So starting with, we'll be talking about Shanks and Blackbeard. These two decks play very similarly, where the objective is to control the board very early until you have enough Dawn to start dropping out your bosses. Shanks is a little bit faster because they can drop stuff out on 7, which is like their Whitebeard, their Ben Beckman, and then 8, their Dragon slash Rayleigh, and then of course at 10 they'll be dropping their Shanks and Rogers, while Teach will be spending a lot more time to be dropping out cards to control the board and then dropping out their 10 cost Blackbeard to then set up a wall and then big attackers to go for game. And then, of course, we do have our faster paced decks. Don Quixote do Flamingo, which is actually still really good and will be good going into set 10, looks like, from the Asian tournament results. And then lastly, we'll be talking about some kind of Monkey D. Luffy deck. Now, it doesn't exactly have to be the purple Monkey D. Luffy. This one specifically, it could also be purple black and it could be red purple Luffy because purple Luffy stuff have gotten just a crazy amount of support, uh, especially in Gum Gum Giant in this last set where it makes it super easy to guard, gain extra cards, and while purple already inherently has very big bosses to play with. So, to deal with that, we'll talk about some black cards that you should be considering adding into your black deck. So, of course, people were already playing the 4 cost Kuzan, but now it's actually even better simply because it is not a on play effect, right? So, this 4 cost Kuzan will now help you a lot more than it did to help remove your opponent's big cards, especially in red and in Blackbeard, and because it's an on attacking and not an on play. And then next we have Smoker. This Smoker cannot be KO'd by effects. For Dex to remove it, for Shanks to remove it, it specifically would have to be something like Ben Beckman, where it trashes the Smoker instead of KOing it. And then for Blackbeard, they have to reduce Smoker by 1 as well as play Black Hole to negate the effects, then remove it. And the other reason it's so good is for its double attack. Your opponent who wants to stall out for time, you hitting them for 2 damage is not something they want. And this is actually a very strong stat line for 5 costs, 7k attack on its own, 8 when you attach the 1 Dawn. So this is actually as big as it gets because the vanilla line is 4 costs for 6k and then 5 costs for 7. So this is actually really good with an effect. Next, of course, we'll be talking about eShow. People will have to start tossing eShows back in. This actually did come out of my smoker deck in the OP08 simply because I never had a good time to drop it because the format was so fast with Doflamingo. There was never a good chance to drop eShow on Doflamingo. But eShow is actually really good now for the slower paced game because for Shanks, if you don't have time to if you don't have the Dawn to attach to your leader and play cards to remove your opponent's stuff, then you can catch up because your opponent will have a bigger hand. You can catch up by ripping 2 cards out of their hand. And even if your opponent locks this out with, let's say, Blackbeard for the on play effects, that just generic blanket effect while it's on the field for 1 Dawn to give all of your opponent's character -3 cost is actually really good. And then flowing right into that, we'll be now playing this 9 cost Kaido. This is not a black card that people were playing at all, okay? Because it's really weak if you look at the stat line for a 9 cost for a 9k. Are you kidding me? That's really weak. And it's basically an on play effect, except it's not, okay? So it actually does bypass the Blackbeard negating on play. So activate main. Once per turn, you may trash 1 card from your hand. If this card was played on this turn, basically on play, trash up to one of your opponent's character with a cost of 7 or less. Then your opponent trashes 1 card from their hand. This is really good. You know, you can combo it with E-Show or an Ice Age or something. Because it does have 9, you do still have 1 Dawn to work with to remove a Blackbeard. So that's really nice. And the ripping a card, you can rip something out of Blackbeard so that they have less resources to keep dropping stuff to then lock you out of your on play effects. So these are the black options that I am recommending to toss into your black decks. Next, we'll move on to blue. For blue, there's really only 2 options. Toss in your red rocks, couple red rocks. Now, red rock's going to be really good, especially into Blackbeard, but it does really work into Shanks as well. So you can remove whatever boss that they drop. But if they do drop like their 10 cost Shanks or Roger. Remember, those cards have rush, so they're going to get a hit out of it, but it is still better to just permanently remove it than to leave it on the field for you to get attacked again. So Red Rock just to remove something. And then, of course, we have Gravity Blade Raging Tiger. This is obviously going to be good against the faster pace deck, so it's going to hit stuff like Dofi really good. It's going to hit purple Luffy, if they any kind of purple Luffy, because a lot of them do set up blockers. So the black, purple Luffy, or black purple Luffy does set up blockers, as well as the red purple Luffy sets up blockers, especially in forms of Queen and Frankie. So something like this can remove. Um, and this is actually still a way to remove against Blackbeard. Still a way to remove Jesus Burgess. So something to consider. Next, we have green. For green, we have these two options. For Jewelry Bonnie, it's a bit of a stretch. It's all about timing because up to one of your opponent's rested character or Dawn cards will not become active in your opponent's next refresh phase. Now, this one's a bit of a stretch, like I said, because if your opponent's about to go to 10 and they didn't, let's say hypothetically, they didn't activate um, their negate on play effects that late in the game, you could drop this and buy yourself a turn from the Blackbeard from coming out or a Shanks or something from coming out because you stun a Don and they actually need all 10 of their Dons. Now, this is a cheeky move. I can only expect, to actually work once, but it does buy you a turn, so something to consider. And then, of course, we have Krieg. Krieg, trashing one card from your hand KO up two of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. Really good into something like Dofi, where all their stuff are 4 or less, because that's the whole point of the leader. And then, of course, it also has double attack. So for one Dawn, no other conditions, it gets double attack, which will hit really hard and really fast into, Shanks and Blackbeard. Next, we have purple. Purple, these are the two cards I'm recommending for to as a counter card, slow beam to rest one of your opponent's characters, after giving a 2/2 counter. This is really good because the current meta is either really big bodies or like really big bodies, so you can, you know, counter out one and then rest one, which will get you a ton of value. And then, of course, next we do have Magellan. Magellan's a little bit better than Bonnie because your opponent probably won't be activating Blackbeard's effect too early, so that you can slow your opponent down by returning one of your Dawn to return one of theirs. So that's something, and it actually ends up staying on the field again because your opponent doesn't want to take it out. So this is actually something that would stay on the field because if your opponent takes it out, they're going to lose two Don, and that's not something that they want to do. Next, we have yellow, Kingdom Come. KO one of your opponent's characters only really works as a late game card because you have to trash life from the top of your card until you only have one life. But it's something to consider because if you're really going in that late and you have kind of managed to control your opponent's board, it might actually be worth it just to get rid of something just permanently. And then lastly, of course, we have Shirahoshi. When this character is KO by your opponent's effect, if your opponent tries to remove it, basically, you get to recover one. And if they don't remove it, it's a blocker. So it's, of course, really good. And I think that's it because we don't really have anything to talk about for red. Red really has no real good counter cards for the current meta. Of course, there's Diable Jambe, stuff like that, but that's stuff that people were already going to play anyway. All right, guys, thanks for watching and good luck. I hope this video helps.